When Siri Iris happened, we were getting a lot of inbound offers for a fundraise for VC capital. We are like, why would I need so much money? I just need $1 million. I can run for 3 years. Like, why should I take more money, right? Many people think it is a very big mental block generally. And when your leaders don't explicitly tell you, you end up thinking there's a boundary around me. This is what I'm supposed to do. That boundary is completely in your mind. Nobody has told you that boundary. If you actually go back and write down, this is what I can do, this is what I cannot do, the cannot do parts is not told you by anybody. So I always had this notion of more machines, less humans. That was my motto. My wife used to say, what stupidity is this? Just remove it, right? But I always really was very proud of it. But at some point I realized that it is a stupidity, right?
You must be thinking another pre-roll? Wait, let me just skip it. With AltUni, there are some boring things which you can avoid, like the long wait for promotions or increments, or the numerous interviews before you land your dream job. At AltUni, we make sure that you're future ready and skilled to be in the top 0.5% class. Click on the link in the description now.
And we were so arrogant probably, and we were probably ignorant that we couldn't take that feedback. So I think taking feedback is something which is very important in life. And I've seen a lot of leaders, because of the kind of upbringing they had in their career, they probably did not face such situation, they may not have that. And that's a very key skill, right? And that we didn't have. So they were like, these guys are smart, probably, maybe, but it is going to be very hard to work with him. So we had a bet on Friday, we had built something called Iris, which is Siri in reverse, but also like a tongue-in-cheek. And we built it, and when I just put it on Twitter tagging some journalist saying that, hey, there's an Android version for Siri called Iris. We've been building it for the last 4 years. Because Siri was built by SRA from 1985 or something like that. Right? So we also made a backstory and all. And that guy asked me, can you send me over the APK? So I had sent it over. I was not even like optimistic, and I slept over on the weekend. And on Saturday night, this happened because TechCrunch wrote an article, hey, there's an Android version of Siri called Iris. It is pretty cool. And that post had like 100,000 shares and some crazy number of activity on that. And that time, like I was telling you, that TechCrunch used to write only 3 or 4 articles a day, right? It's not like an hour they keep writing so many things. So this really, and then I was like, dude, we don't get any limelight out of this because APK is hosted on that article itself. You can click and download. So I reached out to him and said, can I at least put it on Play Store and you can link to that rather than, so that at least we'll get some value out of it. He said, okay, fine. So we put it on Play Store. Next few days, it went really crazy. There's so many downloads, so many people, and we were working day and night on this product, giving updates. It became big. We raised funds from Sequoia, Qualcomm. After that, we were still stuck with Friday. We didn't want. So again, lesson number 2, taking feedback, right? These guys were telling that, hey, you have traction. This Iris thing is picking up. And Micromax launched a phone with a TV ad powered by Iris. Like just like iPhone had Siri was their selling point for iPhone 4. This get launch a phone with Iris as their key feature. And there also we didn't get a penny from that. We got our logo and the end of the 30-second ad for 0.5 seconds. That was the.
And why did you not look for monetizing that?
I'll give you the story, another story. I was in a village last week, and there was a farmer. He wanted some help. I helped him. And I said, what do you grow? He said, I grow tomatoes and carrots and something. I said, give me a few tomatoes. And they said, I'll come. And he came back with 2 sacks of tomatoes. I'm like, dude, I don't want that much. And I'll pay you. I will not take it for free. He said, no. I'm anyways going to throw it away. Because nobody's buying tomatoes. 30 kilos I'm selling for $200. I'm like, but you may be selling it, throwing it away. But I am ready to pay. That is what business is, right? But this is the same thing happened to us. Where for us, Iris was, it's just a hack we did for overnight. Friday is a real deal. We should focus on that. But everybody around us was telling, including the Sequoia, Qualcomm, everybody is telling that, why don't you focus on this product? Which is giving you traction. So when Micromax was giving us that deal, we're like, okay, how can I make this deal help me get some traction for Friday? Right? And we're also fairly stupid in terms of business sense. So we couldn't negotiate. We just got it done. Anyways, so there was some kind of rev share and other thing, but we basically did not deal it properly. So we did that, and we continued to work on Friday. And we also had, see, Friday was well ahead of its time, because if you look at Google Now story also, Google Now did not pick up on day one. It was forced upon you. It was as a left screen. Every phone has Google Now. Over the period of time, it collected a lot of data and things like that. So, but we ran it for 5 years, and then we realized that it has to be a part of a platform to make sense, because we can't go and put it on phones, right? And then that's what happened. So we sold to a company called Quixi, which was building the experiences for many mobile manufacturers, including Apple. And they wanted to use our tech to render the customer experiences. So it was a Mountain View based company. We had a decent exit that way. But looking back, second thing was when Siri Iris happened, we were getting a lot of inbound offers for a fundraise for VC capital. We are like, why would I need so much money? I just need $1 million. I can run for 3 years. Like, why should I take more money, right? That's another thing. You're very linear in your thinking. You're just linear that I have a problem A, this is solving problem B, but it's not like I can carry the resources and keep it for a new problem which may come in the future. So we didn't have all those smartness in us. But like I was just 24, 25, so I can give myself some leeway there. Yeah, so that's what happened with Dexetra. So
Absolutely fascinating story. But this realization that Iris was more valuable than what you thought it was, when did that happen? Did it happen when a year later, 5 years later, or is it now recently that you feel like, oh, I should have just pursued that?
See, I think if I go back and try to play the chess game, there was no way we would have made it big. See, we always think that, oh, I did one mistake in that butterfly effect which created everything. That's not the case, because we lack that business smartness in us. So even if we had gone back and done that, we would have failed at some other stage, because we needed to have that muscle in us, which we didn't have. That's the truth, very honest truth. But yes, Iris would have become big. There are multiple companies which came out from such a story after us, much smaller than us, but eventually they chipped away and they got to where they wanted. So Dexetra was very, very popular in the tech community in India. Especially, we were Google used to run this best app from a country, and we used to be winner for every year, like continuously for 4 or 5 years since.
How many apps did you launch in that time?
So while we were mainly focusing on Friday was like more of a platform. We used to say context as a platform. So we used that platform to launch a bunch of apps. For example, we had a dialer, which was pretty popular in that time, called Dial App, which was basically you remove call history, and based on the signals and the location and different values that you have, it will show you the most relevant person. For example, let's say we have this event and it is in my calendar, your name would be there on the top. Or if it's a Friday night, I generally listen to a romantic song, my wife's name would be in the top. So all the signals will be taken, and so 6 out of 10 calls that were made from my dialer was coming from that context list. Nobody used to go to the call history, because you're getting MyGate and Swiggy, it will be on the top of your call history filled with it, right? When you open a dialer today, even today it's not solved for. So that was one product. We had something called Trails, which will basically show on your map everything that you have done, whatever picture you have taken, which is all part of Google Maps now. So we had bunch of such kind of contextual products.
So obviously you've sold your company, and what were your emotions at that time?
Very honestly, it was a relief, because
it was a relief.
It was relief because I remember still sitting with the Sequoia member who was part of my startup, and I told him that, hey, I really don't know what to do. It's my fiduciary responsibility to do the right thing for the company. But at this moment, I don't think I'm 100% sure where I can take this. He said, if you want funding, we can help you out, whatever you want to do next, but be sure about what you want to do. It's your call. He was very nice. But then I realized that maybe the right thing to do is, right now there is some interest from the market. A bunch of people want to. I really realized that there has to be somebody who are more mature to make this into a product, to productize what tech platform that we have built. So I was like, this is the best option for me. So I was happy that I could find a home where it was being put to use in a better way, right?
Interestingly, you've never started up since. You then joined TrueCaller, I think.
No, before that I was a part of another startup. It was called Lookup. It was based on Koramangala again. It was a short stint, but again they were doing something similar to Dunzo, where doing hyperlocal. But the payments were not that time. You didn't have UPI and other things, so it was very hard to reconcile the payments across the merchants and the courier and the company. That also got sold, but I left the company before that. And then I took a break actually. I took a break for 6 months to figure out maybe I should start up again. But ignorance is a bliss, right? We are like, you read some article in TechCrunch, you read about Steve Jobs or Bill Gates, and you're like, yeah, we can be that person. But there's so many things behind that, right, which we didn't know. Luckily, we had spent 3 years in Bosch. So some of the Bosch culture we brought in terms of processes and some discipline we had. If I'd started right off the college, I'm sure you would have crashed and burned in a year. So that 3 years itself added a lot of value. But after that, like when I'm always, anytime thinking about starting up, I'm like looking at n number of possibilities, playing the chess game, playing it to 10th move, and then like, oh, it will fail here. So I'm not probably really able to take that leap of faith, right?
Let's come to your TrueCaller days. Again, I think you joined TrueCaller when TrueCaller was probably, again, not, like people in India didn't know that it was a Swedish company that is doing this for them. And of all the countries in the world, I feel like TrueCaller's real use is in this country because we are just inundated with.
I think many people who have come from big companies or joined big companies from startup would have faced this. So I knew TrueCaller folks back when I was running Dexetra because they were also Sequoia portfolio. And they also had interest to buy my company because dial-up was really doing well. Dialer, it was a dialer. They were looking for a dialer to add to their caller ID. But that conversation landed somewhere. But eventually, he really liked some of our core founders. And after this thing, when I was in a 6 month break, I also wanted to be with a team where I was really sure that what I'm going to do next is something which I like. So I did some dating with a bunch of startups and I didn't like them. And then he called me and said that, hey dude, we are trying to set up an office in India and we want to build India-specific products. Are you on board? So there was literally, I was employee number 1 for that. I'm like, fine, I can do. And I was also building something as a side project, which was a mix between calling and message, which is called flash messaging. So I showed it to him and then he's like, yeah, this sounds interesting. So I joined TrueCaller and then built some of the India-specific products like their payments, the first version of TrueCaller payments, their authentication SDK, developer SDK.
How many of you were working here in India at that time when you had joined? I remember going to your office, you had like sometime 10 people and not more than 10 people.
Yes, TrueCaller, so that was one of the things which attracted me to TrueCaller was that TrueCaller was a 50-member company, all put together, running a 200 million DAO or a 150 million DAO product. Such a small company running such a big shop. So they were very tight. Their focus on what we want to build, exactly opposite to what we had, right? Even if it is slightly adjacent to what they're doing, they will not pick it up. They're like, this is not my core problem. And they had probably using data in a better way where, hey, we have, when you say they know which countries such things will work, where the systems are not good enough, trust factor is low. There is a lot of zero-sum situations. So TrueCaller has a formula that if in a country I reach certain critical mass, it will automatically pick up and some of the things. We are so fascinated to see it's been plotted in such a beautiful way. So that gave me from intuitive product management to a data-driven or data-informed product management also in that process, right? When I started, it was only me. I used to continue to write code. Then in the next 3 months, I had a team of 4. So the 4-member team is what built many of the V1s of the product. And then eventually it kept scaling. Then TrueCaller acquired Chiller. Chiller brought another 50 members. And then it became a 100-member team in India. So India team grew, but when it became sizable, I moved out.
Then your next stint was at InMobi and the various products that InMobi had. One is obviously Glance, which I think is on a lot of mobile phones in India. And then I think eventually also ended up working on Roposo at some point of time.
Yeah, so Glance, when I joined, Glance was in a similar stage. There was like 10, 15 engineers. I joined to lead the engineering team. InMobi is even more bigger than TrueCaller, much more mature culture, solidified, both in engineering terms and otherwise. And so it helped me understand much more broader aspects of things. But in the next 2 years, I elevated to the engineering head for the whole Glance organization. So Glance became a separate company, and Glance acquired Roposo. Roposo was one of the products of Glance. So Roposo, there was Glance Gaming, there was Glance TV. There was like 8 or 9 products. So all the product engineering rolled up to me. So I was more working from a little away from hands-on more.
So you stop coding now.
Yeah. So I always had this notion of more machines, less humans. That was my motto. My wife used to say, "What stupidity is this? Just remove it." Right? But I always really was very proud of it. But at some point I realized that it is a stupidity, right? The fact was that I realized that it is easy for you to just bulldoze and say, hey, I can do this. But it's not scale. It's not scale for, we have 9 business units and you cannot build 9 things, right? And can you bring out the best in somebody else? Can you delegate and also give him your seat and make him do your stuff so that you can do something else? That is the whole thing, right? So that required a lot of coaching and a lot of learning on the sides from other leaders. I was probably the youngest leader in the organization at that point of time. So it helped me understand how it is hard to give somebody space and trust and then make them deliver their best. So that's what I learned in a glance from nobody else than Naveen. Naveen is a master of this.
And during COVID, I think some of your products, Larry, zoomed. So how was that experience leading that team and seeing those kinds of metrics and numbers?
So I think as an engineering culture, so from product I moved to engineering here, so I was been seesawing between these two, right? So one thing I always believed, or I think I figured out was that we say that, hey, today we are not going to do things great because suddenly something has changed. There is COVID. Otherwise I would have done, every star was in the line, I would have performed. But there are a lot of exceptions that's happening. At least for engineering, we realized that is not the exception, that's a norm. So when you build an agile team, when you build something which is resilient, you are expecting this as the status quo, that something is going to change. Are we ready to take that opportunity?
Absolutely.
So that's what we were, and then that's why when COVID came, we really utilized that. When there was a chance for the Indian short videos to become big, we took the opportunity. So there are multiple instances where this aspect of us being able to create new kitchens and start cooking fast and deliver food.
Tell us about what is it that you're doing now at Zeta. You work with Bhavin Turakia, another bootstrap founder who's built like fortunes by probably being incredibly smart and also super early to the internet game in India. So how is that experience currently?
When I was in Glance, I had a lot of trust with my founders and the leadership. And at some point I was like, am I getting a little complacent? Like I want to be in a place where I have to test myself. And I moved out and joined Zeta. And it is completely in the opposite spectrum of anything that I've done in my life. A SaaS company.
Zeta, by the way, guys, is a fintech company for people who are not aware.
Yeah, Zeta builds the only complete modern banking stack in the world. And when I say modern banking stack, which means cloud native, 100% API driven, just like when the internet had server farms and then we moved to AWS and Azure or cloud, this is exactly the same transformation we're doing for banks. And that's not for India only, it's for the globe. Right? Nobody in the world has anything like this. So it is a very, very compelling problem statement. And can we make money simple? Today you pay an EMI, it has a lot of things that is written, how it is calculated. Nobody understands. Can I make it simple for a normal person to understand how money is, what is your money doing? How can make payment secure? So that is what Zeta is trying to do. So from that perspective, I had to learn everything from first principles, from learning from material, from learning the domain, learning the product, learning the market. It was a great, it really pushed me to my extreme, which is what I always enjoy. So been there for 6 months now, and you will see some phenomenal launches that's coming from the Zeta stable very soon.
Awesome. I'm going to open up the floor for the audience. I know there are a lot of questions.
From your experience, can you tell me what you knew what happened when you were starting out, what wrongs that you did? So can you just give us some advice on to how do you start right now? If you were 20, what skills that you would have had would have helped you?
Very few things we did right. Like mostly we did things wrong. But two things that I'm really proud of was the team, my founding team. We had 6 co-founders. That itself was like, in the first slide you see 6 co-founders, itself many investors were like, okay, thank you, bye. Right? But I can very proudly say, till the end, we had like we had so many differences technologically on the approach and other things, but never had any fundamental difference in the way we were as a team, right? So finding that, and even today, one of the reasons I give, I know it could be a half my bias, but is that I don't have a co-founder to start with. That's why I never started up again. In a startup, you are going through a lot of crazy stuff which you have not seen, and you are approximating a lot of things, and you will be emotionally very drained and all those things. And when you have at least 2 or 3 people with you, you may not be in the same cycles. Cycles are not synced, so they might be in a better mental state. So it will help you go through it. That's one. Second thing is, if you in the current stage, your body is flexible to take such hits, right? And it is definitely an opportunity for trying it out. If you have something worth trying, it is nothing wrong in going and figuring it out. Like today, there is also a lot of support system around, entrepreneurial experience, to build that. At that time, that we did not have it, which is a good thing and a bad thing. But at this stage, is the most easy time for you to, you're offsetting probably, a small salary that you have, that is, and some experiences in working in a large organization. But you can always come back to that. So this is the best time for you to try something out.
So right now I'm working in Deloitte, and I really feel like I'm doing a very small part of whatever is being done, and I'm like a minuscule of the entire process. And I'm actually thinking of going into a startup and be a major contribution. So do you think that I can go forward with it?
The first part of this I disagree, because many people think it is a very big mental block generally, and when your leaders don't explicitly tell you, you end up thinking there's a boundary around me. This is what I'm supposed to do. That boundary is completely in your mind. Nobody has told you that boundary. If you actually go back and write down, this is what I can do, this is what I cannot do, the cannot do parts is not told you by anybody. If you want to prepare a project plan for something which is not your project and present it to somebody, it only takes you that effort to send an email with a deck. So how fast you can grow is with you. In Deloitte also you can do that. But you have this mental block. Many times you think that, okay, this is my boundary within which I'm supposed to operate, which is something which is coming from a tribal knowledge around people doing the same things. But actually, if you look at what you are not able to do, there are things you can actually do. So even in Deloitte, you can do the same things that you do because in startup you feel there is no rules, so I can do whatever. But here also there is hardly any rules. All the rules are in your head.
Narayan, it was an absolute pleasure hosting you. I'm so glad you made it and shared all of this with us. Thanks a lot, guys. A big round of applause for Narayan.
Thank you guys.
You must be thinking another pre-roll? Wait, let me just skip it. With AltUni, there are some boring things which you can avoid, like the long wait for promotions or increments, or the numerous interviews before you land your dream job. At AltUni, we make sure that you're future ready and skilled to be in the top 0.5% class. Click on the link in the description now.